Right, let's see how this is working, guys. I want to see, make sure everything is up. I think we're up and running. Yeah, I think we're up and running. I wanted to share some information with you guys about my IRS audit nightmare. And I haven't went live in a while on YouTube. So this is the first time I'm going live in a while. So I do want to share this, some of my social feeds so they can see it. So give me a second and let me make sure I share this on my Facebook feed and then we'll go from there. All right. So I wanted to get online and now you guys, I promise you got my attention now. All right. So I wanted to get online and just share some information about when I got audited by the IRS in 2011. Scary, scary situation. Whenever, we've always been taught, um, you know, get we've always been taught to go and do our taxes and doing, I call it Christmas in February, when a lot of people they get a huge refund in the month of February and they get excited. They get excited because these are, a lot of times we look at, getting people getting down payments for cars, people getting big screen televisions, people getting money for spring break, and we really celebrate that refund. But what happens when you don't get that refund? What happens when instead of getting a refund, you get a letter from the IRS and that letter says that you've been audited? How do you handle that situation? Let me share with you my experience and what I've learned on how to handle that type of situation. But equally as important, what you can do, not necessarily to avoid it. Well, I guess there's some things you can do to avoid it, but what you can do if you're named in an audit. Because if you don't understand these things, man, it could be a scary situation. So let's start off really by just talking about what um what is a refund. I know you said, man, that's crazy. Why would you start out talking about what is a refund? Because I don't think people fundamentally understand the way our tax stuff works. And when you understand how taxes work, when you understand why we pay taxes, when you understand why exactly you got a refund or why you exactly have to pay, then you'll start to understand more about money. And the more you understand about money, then the more you're able to take advantages of all the things out there that are working for us. Look, guys, we got a lot of stuff working for us when you understand money. It's just that the average person who works a W 2 job, we've never been taught this. We've taught that money was made to spend, right? But money in and of itself is a tool. And there's so many things like any other tool, unless you don't understand how to use it, then a lot of times you can get it wrong. But once you unlock it and know how to use it, then it makes all the deal. So look, I've been hesitant around a while, so I was trying to make sure that we had our viewers on here. Let me fix my camera real quick. So let's get into it. Why do we pay taxes, or how do you get a biggest refund? I hear people talk about this all the time. Is that man, they get excited when they maximize their refund, when they're getting $5,000, $6,000 back at the beginning of the year. They get excited, so they're looking for preparers to really try to get them as much money back as possible. But let's talk about where that money comes from. See, if you don't have a job and if you're not paying into the IRS, no money in, no money out. So anytime a tax preparer tells you they can get you a bunch of money from the IRS in a refund and you know you didn't put a lot of money in that, then I'll be a little worried about that because that's one of the big parts of you probably being audited in the first place. Because normally when you have these preparers who don't have years of experience, I'm not a tax preparer, guys. I just know that, I've been getting my taxes prepared for quite some time. And I see the stories because my company, what we deal with is we deal with people that, among other things, get audited. It's not strictly audits, but we give them a tax attorney to help them navigate them so they can lower their risk during that particular audit. But if you got a preparer and you didn't work a lot that last year, but yet they promise you a big refund, then I would say that there's something they're doing a little shady that's gonna give you put you on the IRS radar because the IRS finds out that preparer is not doing great things, then there's a chance that they'll audit a lot of people they prepare because they know they're doing shady things. But anyway, whenever you get a job at the beginning of the year or the beginning of that job, when they ask you about your dependents, they're asking you all these different questions. The reason why they're asking you the questions is because the IRS, what it does, it takes a guess on how much you actually be liable for. Each one of us is responsible for a certain amount of our checks that they pull out, and they use that funding. The federal government does use that funding out of our payroll to actually pay the federal government. So if you're wondering how, these congressmen get paid, how these, war gets instituted, where, taxes is one of the reasons how, is that they take a portion of our check on what we earn and they guess what they want to take out. So it's just a guess up front. At the end of the year, or when you file your taxes at the beginning of the year, what they do is they take the actual money that you made and they figure out, okay, did we take too much or did we take too little? Well, if they took too much, they give you what's called a refund. If they take too little, then you owe. Now, this is my personal views. I'm going to tell you why. In a way, I would rather pay the IRS a little money or have a low refund than have a fat check. That sounds crazy, but I would rather pay them a little bit, in the best situation, have a small refund than a big fat check. The way money works is this. There's this thing called inflation, and most of you know this. Look, don't get mad that I'm getting elementary on you guys. But inflation means that the dollar 2 years ago, what you can buy for $1, you really can't buy now. Why is that? You can't buy it now simply because that your dollar loses value. So, I mean, think about it. Think about the things that you could buy 5 years ago and what the costs were. Well, inflation comes around and it raises the prices up, right? It raises the prices up of what you usually can buy. So when the IRS takes money out of your check, when they pull money out of your check, that means that they are paying themselves, or they are, pulling what they feel as though your taxable money should be. Now, let's say you had a $5,000 refund. Next year, you're happy, you get $5,000. They're giving you back the $5,000, or they're giving you back $5,000 of the money that they took from you because they overtook. But this is what I don't understand. If I borrow money from a bank, and let's say I borrow $5,000 from a bank, then when I pay the bank back, I pay this thing called interest. That's the way the bank makes the money, right? Because the bank makes money for giving me money I didn't have at the time. If I owe the IRS some money and they give me a date to pay it, and if I don't pay it by that date, that interest compounds. That means I owe them more, right? If, let's say, for example, if they audit you and they found out you owe them more money, then they're going to pay you interest compounded over the time since they audited you, since you owed the money. So if I owed the money 3 years ago, the interest is going to accumulate over 3 years, because the IRS says, look, you owed us this and you didn't pay us, so now you owe us more. So that's the way interest works. But ain't it weird that when the IRS takes money from you and give it to you in a refund, that they're not paying you interest on money that they overtook? That's a weird deal. And when they don't pay you interest, what they're doing is you're looking at it, they're just giving you back money that they borrowed last year. But your dollar is not worth the same, guys. Think about that. Inflation. That's why when people save money and they put it in a savings account, I call it a losing account. Because let's say you've been saving for 5 years. And let's say the first year you put in there $500. Well, by year 5, that $500 is not worth that same $500, because things then went up. Even if you have it, what we call a high interest yielding savings account, which that's less than 1%. You get you something that's 1%, you're doing absolutely good. Most people are getting like a fraction of percentage. But if you put your money in a savings account and a year passes and you pull the same amount of money out, then inflation, if it went up 3%, that means your dollar is worth 3% less than when you originally put it in there. That's why you got to put your money into vehicles that are going to really increase your income, increase the money. So when the IRS pays you back dollar for dollar what they took, the dollar for dollar is not worth the same anymore. Look, if I remember the movie Back to the Future, and that was a movie with the guy that he was in the past, he went in his time machine, and he fast forward, how many years. If I was in 2004 and I teleported to 2024 with $20 in my pocket, and I went to the store, I would be blown out my mind. Because that $20 in 2004 is not worth the same as it is in 2024, right? Does that make sense? And if that makes sense, why in the world is the IRS charging, not giving us any interest whatsoever on the money they borrowed, and they'll give it back to me in a refund? When I hear people brag about, man, I got $5K, I got $10K back. Yeah, that's good that they gave you some of your money back, but A, they gave it back at a lower value, and B, they didn't even add any interest onto that. So to me, that's not the best deal. So what did I do? How can you, in this world where the IRS doesn't pay you interest on money they take over your check, how do you win? Well, I'm going to tell you why. How? If you are a W-2 employee only, meaning that the only way you make money is through a job, they pay you W-2, you work an hour, you get paid an hour, or salary, or whatever it is, you are the most taxed entity in the United States. Like literally, you are living, it doesn't make sense because they're taxing you on everything. And when you file your taxes, you have a big tax footprint because there's no deductions. But if you have a home-based business, and this is where, when I discovered this about home-based businesses, this is what got me to a position where I wanted to make sure that even if I wasn't making money in my home-based business, it was just smart for me to have a home-based business. Because the way the tax laws are written, they're written for business owners. And if you are just an employee, that means that there are certain deductions you don't get, certain credits you don't get. See, when you file your taxes, let's say you made $50,000 at your job. Well, there are certain credits they're going to give you, like a child credit. Those credits that they give you and those deductions that you may have, like educational deduction, things of that matter, what they do is they take that 50 grand and they go up against it and they lower it down to, and whenever your credits are over, that's the taxable amount they can tax you on. So you may have made 50, but they can only tax you on 40. You have a home-based business. The laws are written where things that used to be liabilities now become assets. What that means is now that this cell phone I'm broadcasting this on, because this is a cell phone, I'm using it, that $1,000 cell phone you just bought that you go on Facebook with, now you can write that off as a business phone because I have a home-based business. I use my phone for my business. Go to your CPA before you try to do this now. Get a tax preparer that understands home-based businesses. But the monthly cellular bills, the internet I use in my house, a percentage of my house because I operate a home-based business from out of my house. I can write off a percentage of my electricity, dinners, whenever I give my card out and talk to the staff. I mean, there's so many ways that I can lower my taxable footprint by just opening a legitimate home-based business. And that's the key. It has to be legitimate, guys. And you have to have an intent of making profit. But even when folks join me in our home-based business, even if they don't make a lot of money, they're going to really make a lot of money and save a lot of money on their taxes. Way more than what they even spent to start their business. So that's the key in my opinion. If you want to avoid an IRS nightmare, get your home. Well, if you want to not avoid it, because you'll get audited. I got to get back on the subject, guys. I kind of went on a tantrum. When I got audited by the IRS, 2011, TurboTaxed it out. Any deduction they told me I can get, I got. Because I was just looking at the deductions. I didn't understand how this worked. IRS sent me a letter a few years later, said I owed them $17,800. $17,800, and they were going to put me on a payment plan. Because I had a good tax attorney. Look, your preparer knows the code. The tax attorney knows the law. Because I had a good tax attorney, normally costs $500 an hour, didn't have to pay anything because of the services we have. That audit went from $17,800 to $700. Guys, that was the quickest $700 check I ever wrote because I thought they made a problem. I thought they made an error. But being that I had a great tax attorney, that's what helped it out. So several lessons. Number one, getting a big refund is not necessarily a big come up. Section not good. Number two, get you a home-based business so you can lower your taxable amount. And number three, get you a good tax attorney. Because if you're audited, you want to make sure that it's not going to be a nightmare like it was possibly for me.